How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be talking about The Mangler 2. This is from 2001, directed by Michael Hamilton-Wright, and stars Chelse Swain and Philippe Bergeron, and of course, Bishop himself, Lance Henriksen. Always great to see him. Now, the original Mangler, kind of a cult classic, pretty underrated. If you haven't seen it, Robert Englund, Stephen King, Tobe Hooper, it really is a good, sort of 80s film that didn't get recognized because it happened to come out in the 90s. A really great, just cheesy, fun movie. But we actually got a sequel, and this would only come out 6 years later. That's not a huge time gap. And we got a sequel to an underrated movie. That should be great, but sadly, this one isn't really that great. This is very, very loose, has essentially nothing to do with the first movie, and every fun little surprise that was in the first movie, all the stuff that made it really good, this movie seems to totally miss. And I guess before we get too far, I'll go ahead and do a brief, non-spoilery plot synopsis. In this movie, you get this girl who tried to run away and sabotage her father's business because she's a rebel, but she gets caught and sent back to an overbearing boarding school run by Lance Henriksen, and it turns out that this school is doing a big upgrade. They have a whole bunch of new tech. Cameras everywhere. You have to swipe a card to get into literally every door, which seems super annoying. But everything is sort of integrated. It's a smart school, and there's even a big electric fence surrounding the school, which will kill you if you touch it. Which seems like a terrible idea to have at a school. This is all sort of proto-testing. It's going to be used in the military later, and right off the bat, you can tell this is a terrible idea. Anyway, even though the kids just got back from some break, they're sending most of them out on a field trip so they can get all the other students out and just focus on the main characters. It's kind of lazy writing, but anyway, the prefects, which I have no idea what that is because I didn't go to one of these fancy schools, and the writers should know that not everyone went to a fancy pants school, but whatever a prefect is, all 5 of our main characters are one of those, and they have to stay behind to monitor the school, and Lance Henriksen has found that someone has vandalized the website, and it's a picture of him painted to look like the Joker kissing a dog, which, as much as technology they get wrong in this movie, that is kind of in line with modern meme culture, so hey, they got one right. But anyway, he says, you guys have to figure out who vandalized the website or we're not doing prom, and everybody thinks it's the main girl, the rebellious one, and she goes, if everyone thinks I'm evil, I might as well be evil, and she goes to the computer and she gets a malicious program. And yeah, the movie, the understanding of technology is not necessarily the best. When you go to get this program, a wire model of a lady's face will explain what it does to you, and when you download it, little skulls will appear. Whatever. But they explain that this program will wreak as much havoc as it possibly can on anyone it can get a hold of, including yourself, which seems like you wouldn't want that, but whatever. She unleashes it on the school, and it turns out it's this big AI, and it's going to start killing people when it meets all this new military-grade technology, and we can kind of guess where the movie goes from there. But anyway, a few things with this. Obviously, first, what does this have to do with the Mangler? If you saw the first movie, you would know it's about evil demon trapped in a laundry mangle that the people have made a sort of deal with the devil-esque type thing in order to sacrifice ladies to the mangle and have success. It's a metaphor for big business. This has nothing to do with that. The connections are very, very loose, primarily being that the evil AI is named the Mangler V2, so it's named the Mangler for some reason, and there is also a regular-sized personal use laundry mangle in this movie that does wind up killing someone, but that's it. The connections are so loose, this almost feels like another Lawnmower Man scenario, and it really is, when writers are legitimately creative and when they make good movies, they deserve more praise. But there's something with Hollywood writers that will get an assignment and then just throw it out the window. Hey, you wanted me to write a sequel to The Mangler? I wrote this tech horror movie instead, and it's very bad, and you're just gonna say it's a Mangler sequel. I don't know. It has nothing to do with the first one. And as a fan of the first, it's really, really frustrating. But like I hinted at earlier, every little thing the first Mangler did right, the second one does horribly, horribly wrong. The big pros of the first Mangler: it had a really good message and metaphor. It had really good characters. It had gore and insanity. And it also had a great 80s feel. Those are the main pros for Mangler. Mangler 2 wrecks all of them. Let's talk about the first one, the message. In this one, it's an evil program, fear of technology. Now, on paper, at a glance, you might say, oh yeah, the Mangler was a machine, time has passed, this is our new machine, it's a different machine horror. But the thing with that is the original Mangler, yes, was a machine, but the horror wasn't about it being a machine. It was a metaphor for the business machine. The system where the rich just swallow up their workers and don't care what they're doing to make money. That kind of metaphorical machine was what the Mangler represented. The Mangler wasn't a technology movie. It wasn't about a tool. It was about forgetting the little people. And it doesn't talk about this here. Now that we're farther in the future and we've seen the horror of big tech and big data, we could rewrite the script nowadays to be about how big business now uses big data to screw over the little guy. But that's not what this script does. It basically goes, ooh, technology's scary, and has a very poor grasp on technology itself. And yeah, it just doesn't work in the message. Next up, the characters. Our main character is sort of a broody, antisocial girl, and she's not great. She seems more like what a side character should be, and the main character should have to convince her to be good. But she's just kind of mopey the whole movie. Mopey and angry and not really super interesting. The rest of her friends, pretty cookie cutter stuff. Nothing too bad, but nothing too interesting. If you've seen horror movies, most of her friends are pretty much stock characters you've seen before. You do get some people that are kind of interesting, like there's a French chef who's kind of funny, and sometimes they'll call him Chef Boyardee. Okay, not great. And none of the characters are really great. And you do have Lance Henriksen. It's always great to see Lance Henriksen, this cranky headmaster of the boarding school, and he, it is pretty intimidating. It's great to see him. There's not really terribly much for him to do or shine in. It's not, you could have really, if you known you had Lance Henriksen, really thought of scenes for him to shine, give him monologues or something, I don't know. But he's pretty underutilized here. It's great to see him. They don't do the best with him, and that really is a shame. So really, this cast is stock. It's not terrible. It's what you'd expect for a low-budget horror movie, so it's not the worst thing ever, but it's not great, and that's when you compare it to the original Mangler. The Mangler had a surprisingly great cast. You know, you had Robert Englund doing a really great Texas Chainsaw Massacre-esque character. Really could have fit in with that family. And then there were other wacky characters like JJJ Photo Man. Wacky, insane, over-the-top, very Tobe Hooper characters in the first one, plus the detective and his hippie brother-in-law. Those two are a great combo, got a lot of laughs, a lot of humor to the movie. So you had those two and all these chainsaw-esque characters. The characters in the first movie were such a pleasant surprise, and now we just get stock characters. You see what I mean? So that's a big problem. But also, the gore and insanity. The first one, so needlessly bloody. And when the Mangler folds someone up like a sheet, it's perfect. You know, yeah, unnecessary and stupid, but that's what made it so great. And then you get this one. And let me tell you, I think it's the first kill in the movie. And this kind of illustrates what goes on. There's a guy walking, and then we see a bunch of wires, you know, like from the computer or a machine. There's a bunch of wires, and they've picked up some garden shears, and you see the wires carrying the garden shears following behind this guy as he's walking, and then the camera cuts away and it's implied that they killed him. And see, that's the thing. The setup of wires grabbing some garden shears and then killing someone, that's pretty funny. But then it cuts off and you don't actually see how this situation resolves itself. We see the setup, but not the payoff. And most of the kills are like this. This movie is rated R, looking at the back of it, but it really feels PG-13 the way all these kills are cut. And granted that this is R-rated anyway, I wonder why all the kills are like this. If I would have had to guess, I would say it's probably just budget. They couldn't afford to do any special effects, so they're like, nah, just show them what might happen and then cut it off. Like, the kill with the Mangle in this movie, the little personal-sized Mangle, probably the best kill, but even then, if you look at it, you can tell they're shooting around doing any real special effects work. The kills are pretty lame, and the thing is, you know, the first one reached such peaks of insanity. Here, it's mostly a really standard movie throughout, and then we get little bits of stupidity. And I want to say, stupidity, not insanity. So we get little stupid moments, and because they don't have a special effects budget, they're not near as stupid as they could have been. And there's really just wasted potential, because that garden shear scene, that really could have been something amazing. So yeah, not building up to insanity, just a boring movie with spikes of stupidity. And yeah, when you talk about stupidity, like, look at the Mangle itself. We don't know what it wants. It just kills, I guess, because that's what it's designed to do when it found military programs. But how can it even make the wires lift up garden shears? No matter what you run through wires, I mean, unless, I don't know, you would have... Like, wires don't twitch when electricity goes through them. But how can it do this? Is it magic? Is it just some hyper-advanced program it can make wires move because of science we don't yet understand? And then there's another scene. Later on in the movie, there's a character in a room, and the water sprinklers turn on, the fire suppression system, and it fills the pipes with boiling water and kills this guy. There's no heater in the sprinkler heads. I don't know how it got the hot water up there, but it somehow made a system do something it doesn't have the capability of doing. And then once it figures this out, once it goes, hey, I killed someone with the sprinklers, why didn't it just turn on all the sprinklers and wipe out everyone in one fell swoop? It does this once, but it's a computer. It should be smart enough to go, that worked. Sprinklers are everywhere. Everyone dies. But no, it just doesn't do this for whatever reason. And the thing is, you know, little stuff like that would be excusable if this movie was truly stupid. If it was dumb, good fun, then we wouldn't care. But because these moments just kind of happen in the film rather than being part of its tone, it doesn't feel right, and it's just a burst of stupidity. But anyway, one last thing I have to mention as far as big problems, and that is that 80s tone. The first movie was an 80s movie trapped in the 90s. This movie, we are 2001, and so we are now a 90s movie trapped in the 2000s. And this is very, very 90s. I mean, the Mangler itself says, "Tell me what you want, what you really, really want." Oh my gosh. Like, bad 80s were fun. Bad 90s is just bad. We open up with the scene where the girl's trying to sabotage her father's business, and she's in like that all-black spy suit, and she's running around trying to look cool. And let me tell you, the biggest way to not be cool is to try too hard to be cool. And that's what this movie does a lot of. And yeah, the opening spy sequence is so cringy, but then the music in the opening sequence, and then later on, whenever it thinks it's getting intense, it plays super bad 90s music. It is really, really, like, it's bad laser tag music. That old da-da-da-da-da-da. It was just terrible. Every time this kicked in, I hated the music. And yeah, so this movie, just a really bad 90s movie from the year 2001. But anyway, like, for real, the thing with this movie is it's a bad movie, but when you compare it to other bad movies that came out around this time, yeah, so-so, probably direct-to-video, I don't know, but it feels like it. Low-budget horror movie, at the end of the day, who cares? But why this is such a problem is because the original Mangler was a very good, underrated movie, and to say this movie that has nothing to do with it is a sequel to a beloved cult classic, that's really where you get the problem. So yeah, it's not the worst thing ever, but telling me that this is the Mangler 2 really just gets me. If it was its own thing, I would say so-so B-grade horror movie, who cares? But since you say Mangler 2, that's where we have a problem. But anyway, I guess that's all I got on this one. I may have ranted a little too long, sorry about that. I'll try to get to Mangler Reborn pretty soon. Curious to see how they round out the trilogy. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my Stephen King playlist. You can see my review for the first Mangler there, as well as things like The Langoliers and The Mist, and even the End Moby-sodes. I've covered a bit of King, definitely working on filling out that playlist. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Relevant playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.